Hey everyone, Tyler Kern here. We're going to talk about some best practices as far as creating and preparing questions for your podcast coming up. So first and foremost, you're going to have a task assigned to you that says prepare questions. And that comes to you here in Asana. And the survey, the way that the client provides information to us is by filling out a survey with just some basic questions, asking them, hey, what do you want to talk about? What are some of the topics? What are some of the things you want to cover? And that survey gets pasted in the corresponding folder in Box. So for this particular podcast, you'll see this is Lucy. I'm not going to try to say her last name, and the podcast is July 7th. So you'll come over to Box. The podcast is in July. And then we'll find Lucy's podcast right here, July 7th. And then you'll have a Word document here that should give you kind of their responses to this podcast survey, right? And some other information, some other things that we need to be able to kind of do the podcast effectively and prepare everything we need to prepare. So you'll have this survey here. And like I said, it gives you just some basic questions here, but you'll get name of the guest, her title, the company she works for, that sort of thing. And then the most important question here that gets answered by the client is, what do you want listeners to learn from hearing this podcast? So you'll have this question here. The answer, what is intercompany arbitration in the insurance world? Many people confuse arbitration in the court system with arbitration in the insurance claims world, so on and so forth. So when I come to a podcast and I'm starting to prepare questions, I like to first and foremost ask, okay, what is important for the client to communicate? What sorts of things are they looking to get across in this particular episode? I'll open this up in Microsoft Word Online. And how I like to kind of structure these is obviously you'll have an introduction where you'll welcome people to the podcast and welcome people to the client's particular show. So if you don't know the name of their show, let us know in Asana, drop us a note or reach out to the DMS. That is probably the best way to do it, is to reach out to the digital media strategist for that particular account and say, hey, I don't know the name of Paragon's podcast. So Paragon is the client in this case. You can see that indicated here. Hey, I don't know what Paragon's podcast is called. Can you help me with that? I know just from doing a lot of their podcasts, it's called Engineering Experience. And so I like to kind of put that at the top. And then later on, I'll craft an outline for this particular episode. But so you have this answer here that kind of tells you a little bit more about what they want to talk about. So what is intercompany arbitration in the insurance world? Many people confuse arbitration in the court system with arbitration in the insurance claims world. So what makes them so different? They might sound the same, but are so much different. So why do insurance companies prefer intercompany arbitration versus court hearings and court arbitrations? What are the benefits of insurance companies to take their claim through intercompany arbitrations instead of going through litigation? And how do I'm not sure exactly what word they meant there. How do insureds benefit from their case going through intercompany arbitration? So they kind of give you some of the questions that they want asked here. And so that is a little bit helpful. But you might do some research on, okay, let's just Google intercompany arbitration. Let's see what some of the basics there are, so you can ask better follow-up questions. But with them wanting to talk about intercompany arbitration, I might, start my introduction by saying, hello, everyone, and welcome to Engineering Experience, a podcast brought to you by Paragon. And then I would probably say, today on the show, we're going to be talking about intercompany arbitration. We're going to be talking about what it is, what makes it different from arbitration in the insurance claims world, and what are some of the benefits. That's what we're going to be talking about on the show today. And joining me as our expert guest is Lucy Avsharian. She's the arbitration manager for Paragon Fleet Response. Lucy, thanks so much for joining us. She's going to say, thanks, this is great. I'm so happy to be here, that sort of thing. But so you'll kind of get down to your questions, and they've really laid out what they want to talk about here. And so when a client kind of tells us, hey, these are the points that I want to make sure I hit, I like to basically follow that to a certain extent, right? So I would probably start off just asking this first question that they put here. What is intercompany arbitration in the insurance world? And then go from there. This is an interesting example because they really ask so many questions here when they tell you what they want to talk about. So I would probably put a lot of these questions, as well as do some other research on follow-up questions that you might have. So many people confuse arbitration in the court system with arbitration in the insurance world. What makes them so different? That's another really good question to ask it. What are some of the primary distinctions between arbitration in the court system and arbitration in the insurance claims world. What are some of the differences there? Help us understand that. That's a question that I would definitely ask. And so I don't want to go too long on this, but you're going to get differing amounts of information for each podcast, right? Some podcasts surveys are going to be really thorough. Some of them are pretty much just going to include, like this one does, the majority of the questions that they're going to want you to ask. But if you ever feel like you don't have enough information to actually fill out a podcast outline with what you need, make sure to kind of raise that flag with us early on so that we can help you get more information. And also, I would start with trying to do some research and find information on your own and see what you can find that's out there to help you kind of prepare for this. So I would definitely work a little bit to try to piece some things together on your own, and also let us know that you don't feel like you have enough information to do a good podcast episode on this. Typically, when I'm preparing for a podcast, I prepare 5 to 7 questions, sometimes more. Generally not less. I like to try to have a minimum of 5. So, I would have, what is intercompany arbitration? So, oh my goodness, so on and so forth, right? So, question. And I like to generally, at the end, ask a summary question. So, hey, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think people need to know about intercompany arbitration? Or do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with us before we sign off today? That sort of thing. I like to ask that at the end, just as a catch-all question, just to make sure we cover all of our bases and get everything out there that we need to do. So those are just some best practices as far as creating and asking questions for podcasts. I like to create an outline. Some clients will want you to stick pretty close to that outline. Others are a little bit more free with, you asking follow-up questions and maybe maneuvering a little bit differently in the conversation. Just feel that out on a case-by-case basis. There's no hard and fast rule of once you create an outline, you have to follow that outline to a T. Some companies like Intel really like it if you just stick straight to the outline. Others are a little bit more, okay, so just feel it out on a case-by-case basis, and it might be a guest-by-guest basis on, hey, I might ask some follow-up. I might tell a client or the guest on a podcast before we start recording, hey, just so you know, I might ask a follow-up question or two that might deviate from the outline. Is that okay? Is that something that you'd be comfortable with? If not, that's totally fine. Just stick to the outline and roll straight through it. But if they're okay with the conversation being a little bit more fluid and conversational, then that is great. We really encourage that and feel some freedom to move questions around as you go if you need to. If they raise a point that you weren't really going to talk about until later on in the podcast, but it feels like it's the right moment to bring that up, then go ahead and do that and feel that freedom just to maneuver a little bit more in the conversation to make it flow freely, to make it sound like a natural conversation. So those are just some best practices as far as putting together questions for a podcast. Once this is done, you can save this and let the DMS know in that prepare questions task that the questions are in the corresponding folder in Box. The DMS should then know to go and grab those and send those to the client ahead of time, just to make sure that they're approved and that everything is on the up and up there. But that's what you need to know.